Syrian man has blown himself up and injured 12 other people near a music festival in southern Germany. Thousands of people were evacuated from the venue after the attack by the man, who was 27 and a failed asylum seeker. We'll bring you the latest from our correspondent at the scene. Also this lunchtime, the unacceptable face of capitalism. MPs criticised Sir Philip Green over the collapse of BHS. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says the UK vote for Brexit means she'll start preparatory work to explore options for Scottish independence. Prince Harry speaks of his regret for taking so long to talk about the impact of his mother's death. And the tactics of England's new football manager. Sam Allardyce wants to create a good team spirit and have some fun.
And here in the south, jailed for a crime he didn't commit, the former Dorset fire chief sent to prison for abusing a schoolboy has his conviction quashed. And the plans unveiled for one of the south's busiest roads.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. There's been another violent attack in southern Germany after a Syrian man who'd had his application for asylum rejected blew himself up, injuring 12 other people. The Interior Minister for the state of Bavaria said the 27-year-old had detonated the backpack bomb after being refused entry to a music festival in the town of Ansbach. Some 2,500 people were evacuated from the venue after the explosion. There have been several attacks in Germany in the last week. So far, just the first has been linked to an extremist group. Here's our correspondent, Andy Moore.
There was a big reaction from the emergency services as reports of the explosion came in. Some of the 2,000 people who'd been attending the music festival were asked to leave the area. The attacker had been denied entry to the event because he didn't have a ticket. He went to a nearby restaurant, sat outside, leaned forward briefly, and the device went off. It's unclear whether the explosion was accidental or deliberate. Today, police were searching an asylum centre where the 27-year-old Syrian lived. He'd arrived in Germany about 2 years ago. His asylum application had been rejected for reasons unknown. A neighbour said he'd never shown any support for ISIS.
He always said that, no, I'm not with them, I don't like them, and such stuff. But I think he had some issues because, he told lies so often without any reason.
He was picked up several times by the police here for narcotics offences and other offences. It was also known that he twice tried to commit suicide.
There have been 4 major violent incidents in Germany in the last week. The first was by a teenage asylum seeker from Afghanistan who was shot dead after attacking 5 people with an axe on a train. On Friday, a German teenager went on a shooting rampage in Munich, killing 9 people. And then just yesterday, a Syrian asylum seeker was arrested after a Polish woman was killed with a machete. The attacker in this latest incident was due to be deported to Bulgaria. His motive is unknown.
The
acts of the past days and weeks do not show a consistent pattern. Most of the terrorists who committed attacks in Europe in the past months were not refugees.
As the mourning continues in Munich, Germany is asking itself fundamental questions about why it's been the subject of so many attacks and whether its generous policy towards migrants has played any part. Andy Moore, BBC News.
Well, let's go to Richard Galpin, who's in Ansbach for us now. And Richard, a traumatic time for Germany. Bring us up to date with what's going on.
Well, it's a very, very traumatic time. As you say, there's been 4 attacks now over the past week, just in Bavaria alone. So people are getting very frightened indeed, I think, and certainly talking to people here. Ansbach is a small town. It's only about 40,000 people. And, one man was saying to me, he's lived here for more than 20 years, saying they never expected something like this to happen in their town. And now, of course, they're worried every time they see someone who looks like a foreigner. They look at them, is this potentially going to be someone who's going to carry out another attack? So that's that continuing fear. What we know about him, though, is obviously he had psychiatric problems. His asylum attempt had failed, and certainly there was the prospect of him being deported. So we're not sure exactly what the motive was, but what we also know is that the bomb was packed with metal fragments. So he clearly carried out this attack with the intent to kill as many people as possible. And it's really just a matter of luck that he wasn't able to get into this music festival where there were at least 2,000 people packed up by the stage. If he detonated there, then of course it would have been an absolutely horrific attack with many, many people killed.
OK, Richard, many thanks. Richard Galpin there. MPs have described events leading to the collapse of BHS as the unacceptable face of capitalism. A report by two Commons committees, Business and Work and Pensions, says the former owner, Sir Philip Green, extracted large sums from the company and left it on life support when he sold it. BHS went into administration in April, putting 11,000 jobs at risk. Its pension scheme has a black hole of more than £500 million. Here's Simon Gompertz.
This is the bleak upshot of the collapse of BHS, the latest of 160 stores to be closed, with thousands of jobs affected and pensioners and pension savers facing cuts to retirement income. If one person is to blame, it's Sir Philip Green, say MPs, former BHS owner, current boss of Topshop. They say his family accrued incredible wealth, that more money left the company than was invested. He then fired blame to all angles except himself, and is what the MPs call the unacceptable face of capitalism.
He's plundered the companies, walked away with a fortune, 11,000 people are losing their jobs, and 22,000 pensions are at stake. It's a pretty grim record.
British Home Stores opened its first shop in 1928, later joining with Habitat and Mothercare. The diary of disaster started in 2000 when Sir Philip Green bought it, only to offload it for £1 last year to someone today's report says he must have known was unsuitable. The buyer, Dominic Chappell, is a former bankrupt. He had no retail experience, according to MPs, was incompetent and self-serving, and had his hands in the till for the millions he made from the deal. Lynn Macmillan, who worked at BHS, joins those calling for Sir Philip Green to be stripped of his knighthood if he doesn't make amends.
Sir Philip's reputation is in tatters this morning. If you only have to look at the newspapers today to see some of the headlines, but I think the consequence is that he's going to have to dig into his pockets and sort out the pension scheme.
The failure of BHS has led not just to furious apportioning of blame, but also desperate soul-searching as to whether British business as a whole is too sullied by power-grabbing and greed at the expense of staff, and in this case, pensioners as well. Sir Philip is thought to be on one of his super yachts. He's made no comment today, but said before he would sort it for the pensioners. So the question is, what course he charts from here? Simon Gompertz, BBC News.
Well, let's go to Norman Smith, our assistant political editor, who's in Westminster. And Norman, the other question, I suppose, is what is the government going to do? What can it do about Sir Philip?
Well, Rita, if I said to you that a senior politician was now calling for the reform of capitalism, for cracking down on corporate irresponsibility, reckless behaviour in the boardroom, you'd probably say to me, oh, well, that must be Jeremy Corbyn, or maybe John McDonnell's waving his red book around again. Not a bit of it. That is Theresa May's view of what now needs to be done in the wake of the British Home Stores scandal, according to her spokeswoman. And so we learn the government is looking at a whole range of measures, including, for example, placing workers on company boards to ensure that bosses can't plunder pension funds, giving shareholders much greater powers to curb the ability of bosses to pay themselves huge pay rises, and greater transparency so we can all see how much top bosses are being paid. Now, in normal times, you would think, well, that's the sort of agenda that a Labour government would pursue. Indeed, most of those measures were in the last Labour manifesto. Theresa May hasn't suddenly become a born-again socialist. The reason she's doing this, I think, is because of the Brexit vote and the view that the reason many people voted for Brexit was a resentment at the way top bosses seemed to be lining their own pockets while they were having to be bearing the burden of austerity, while they were being left behind. And you sense Theresa May is seeking to respond to that.
Norman, many thanks. Norman Smith there. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says independence may be the best way for Scotland to protect its interests when the UK leaves the European Union. She criticised politicians on both sides of the referendum debate for failing to prepare for a vote for Brexit, describing it as one of the most shameful abdications of responsibility in modern political history. Our Scotland correspondent Lorna Gordon is at Holyrood for us now. Lorna.
Yes, Rita, Nicola Sturgeon used extremely strong language in what felt like a very personal speech. She talked of her anger at Scotland as she sees it being pulled out of the EU against its will. She talked of what she saw as the political irresponsibility of both those who had called for this referendum and those who had campaigned for a vote to leave. And she said it was her job as Scotland's First Minister to explore every option to protect Scotland's interests going forward.
To welcome Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland.
It has, Scotland's First Minister said, been the most tumultuous few weeks in politics that she could remember. A month on from the Brexit vote where Scotland voted to remain, Nicola Sturgeon said the country was in uncharted political territory, that there were no rules for what happened next.
The UK that we voted to stay part of in 2014, a UK within the EU, is fundamentally changing. The outlook for the UK is uncertainty, upheaval and unpredictability. In these circumstances, it may well be that the option that offers us the greatest certainty, stability and the maximum control over our own destiny is that of independence.
Nicola Sturgeon said her starting point was protecting Scotland's key interests. This included, she said, making sure Scotland's vote to remain as part of the EU was heard. On the economy, she argued that the free movement of labour and funding for farmers and universities must be maintained, and that human rights must also be protected. She insisted that cooperation on issues like tackling terrorism should continue, and that Scotland must be able to influence the rules of the single market, not just abide by them. Theresa May sees the union as a priority. Her first trip as Prime Minister was to Edinburgh. During it, she said she was in listening mode when it came to Scotland's position on the EU, but dismissed the idea of a second referendum. Labour too say one referendum result shouldn't trigger another, this time on Scottish independence.
Well, I think it's quite important for every single political leader across the United Kingdom to recognise that Scotland should keep the advantages of the European Union, but also within the context of being in the United Kingdom. That's what the Scottish people have voted for, and that's what's important in these negotiations.
It is fundamentally about how...
Nicola Sturgeon says if the UK government values the Union, it's for them to find a way to protect Scotland's interests in the EU. She warned that this current lull might be the calm before the storm. Well, there's some hitherto quite obscure political ideas that are now entering the common political lexicon up here in Scotland. Expect over the next few months to hear more of the reverse Greenland model, the Norway model as well, perhaps. And whilst the ball now looks firmly to be back in Westminster's court, what Nicola Sturgeon made very clear today is that independence is still very much an option which is on the table.
Thank you, Lorna. Theresa May is in Belfast today, meeting the First and Deputy First Ministers and discussing how the border with the Republic, which is in the European Union, will be affected by the UK's withdrawal from the EU. The Prime Minister, speaking in Stormont, said that nobody wants to return to the borders of the past. Well, let's go now to Nick Hyam, who's in Belfast for us now. Nick.
Yes, indeed, Rita. Theresa May's already been to Scotland and to Wales to meet the First Ministers there and reassure the devolved administrations that their interests will be taken account of when the UK comes to negotiate Brexit. Today it was Northern Ireland's turn, but as you say, there is a particular problem here. That land border with the Irish Republic, which people are free to come and go across as they please. How do you reconcile that with a possible future in which the UK has come out of Europe and there is no longer free movement of people? In the past, there were watchtowers, there were roadblocks along that border during the Troubles of the 70s and 80s. Mrs May today said there would be no going back to what they call here a hard border.
Nobody wants to return to the borders of the past. What we do want to do is to find a way through this that is going to work, deliver a practical solution for everybody, as part of the work that we're doing to ensure that we make a success of the United Kingdom leaving the European Union, and that we come out of this with a deal which is in the best interests of the whole of the United Kingdom.
Well, the problem, though, is that the two top politicians here are at odds on the issue of Brexit and the future of Northern Ireland, and that's not going to make resolving these issues any easier. Arlene Foster, the Democratic Unionist First Minister, campaigned to leave. Martin McGuinness of Sinn Féin, the Deputy, campaigned to stay. On the issue of the border, one possible solution is to move it from between the Republic and the north of Ireland and put it somewhere in the middle of the Irish Sea, so that you would have restrictions on people travelling between Ireland, north and south, and Great Britain. Arlene Foster said that's definitely not on.
Actually, one of the fundamental points that I put to her is that there must be no internal borders within the United Kingdom, and I was very clear with her on that, and she responded positively to that. So there will be no internal borders within the United Kingdom.
And we are totally opposed to any border of any description whatsoever, whether it be for trade or the free movement of people. The challenges are obviously certainly in that issue, but there are huge challenges also in relation to the incredible support that we've received from the European Union.
Mr McGuinness said he could see no good coming out of Brexit at all. Well, there is another player in all of this, and that's the Irish government. And tomorrow, Theresa May will meet the Irish Prime Minister, the Taoiseach Enda Kenny, in London. Rita.
Nick, thank you. Prince Harry has said he regrets taking so long to talk about the impact of his mother's death on him. He made the comments to the former England footballer Rio Ferdinand, whose wife died last year and who was asking the Prince for advice on how he should talk to his 3 children about their mother. The conversation took place at an event promoting a mental health campaign set up by Prince Harry with the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Our royal correspondent Peter Hunt reports.
A royal chef hosting a barbecue. On display, Prince Harry's cooking skills and high-profile guests who've triumphed on the sports field and who are happy to talk about their personal vulnerabilities. For former England captain Rio Ferdinand, after his wife's death, his challenge is helping his children grow up without their mother, as Harry has done.
And everything can be okay, but I really regret not ever talking about it.
Yeah,
you know, for the first 28 years of my life, never talked about it.
His mother, Diana, who he said had more guts than anybody else, died when the prince was 12 years old.
Everyone can suffer from mental health. You know, whether you're a member of the royal family, whether you're a soldier, whether you're a sports star, whether you're a team sport, individual sport, whether you're a white van driver, whether you're a mother, father, a child, it doesn't really matter. Everyone can suffer.
One of those who has suffered is the former European sprint champion Ewan Thomas, who experienced depression when injury ended his career.
I felt mentally I was weak because I'd gone from someone who was mentally tough, mentally very strong, physically strong, to someone who felt vulnerable and weak. And you're not weak, you're just going through a time in your life where if you talk to someone, hopefully they'll help you through the other side.
Coming together, communicating, helping each other are the aims of Harry, William and Kate's campaign Heads Together, which also wants to end the stigma surrounding mental health. Peter Hunt, BBC News.
The time is 18 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. A Syrian man has blown himself up and injured 12 other people near a music festival in southern Germany. And coming up, the biggest puppet ever built in the UK makes its way across southwest England.
In South Today, missing for 20 years, but what did happen to Damien Nettles, the TV programme that's trying to find out? And Just Add Water, the Southampton diver who claimed a surprising victory after pulling off the world's hardest dive.
Now, today is the first day of the Democratic National Convention, when the party will officially nominate Hillary Clinton to run against Donald Trump in the US presidential elections. Michelle Obama and Mrs. Clinton's former rival Bernie Sanders will give speeches on the opening night, as Kim Cuttas reports.
In the city of brotherly love, tight security before thousands descend on Philadelphia for the Democratic Convention. An opportunity to rally party voters behind the nominee before the hard work of convincing the undecided in the swing states. The Democratic Party and the Clinton campaign are promising a star-studded affair, a celebration of unity and support for Hillary Clinton. But the unity is not perfect. Here too there's been scandal. Leaked emails indicate the Democratic National Committee always favored Mrs. Clinton. The DNC chair will step down. But Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders still says he fully supports his former rival. He will address the convention on Monday, but there are pockets of resistance.
Choosing between a fascist demagogue like Trump or a corporate-owned oligarch like Hillary Clinton is not a choice. It's lesser evilism all over again.
I think that people should vote for Hillary Clinton, especially in swing states. I think it's very important that Donald Trump doesn't win.
Hillary Clinton was pummeled last week at the Republican convention, an event described by some as dark, even angry, with chants of lock her up. Now both she and the Democratic Party are hoping that here they can reset the tone of this presidential contest, which is starting to feel a lot like a battle for America's soul. Kim Rattas, BBC News, Philadelphia.
A 41-year-old man accused of drugging and murdering 4 men that he met on gay websites has been charged with attacking 8 other people. Stephen Port from Barking in East London allegedly met the men on the internet. He denies all the charges and is due to stand trial in October. Our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford is at the Old Bailey for us now. Daniel, what else was said in court?
Well, Rita, Stephen Port was originally charged in relation to the deaths of 4 young men, Anthony Walgrave, Daniel Whitworth, Gabriel Cavari and Jack Taylor, whose bodies were all found between June 2014 and September 2015 in a small area of Barking in East London. Today he pleaded not guilty to 4 charges of murder, 4 charges of manslaughter and 4 charges of administering a substance with the intention to stupefy in relation to those 4 deaths. But we can now report for the first time today that he's been charged with 17 further offences relating to 8 living alleged victims. That's 7 charges of rape, 6 more charges of administering a substance and 4 charges of sexual assault. Those offences date back to August 2011, and it took a long time for all 29 charges to be put to Stephen Port, sitting on his plastic chair in Belmarsh Prison via video link. He pleaded not guilty to all 29 charges, and he'll be back here at the Old Bailey in the beginning of October for trial. Rita.
Daniel, thank you. Police in the US say at least 2 people have been shot dead and more than a dozen injured in an attack at a nightclub in Florida. The club in Fort Myers was hosting a party for teenagers. Police are trying to determine a motive for the attack. Don Johnson reports.
Breaking news, another deadly shooting at a Florida nightclub, this time in Fort Myers.
America wakes up to news of yet another shooting.
Engine 13, possible shooting in Club Blue, Fort Myers. We're getting reports of multiple people.
Officers were called after midnight as a teen disco ended. They found 2 dead and 16 injured. They were young people, the oldest 27, the youngest just 12.
1 kid got shot in the head, 1 kid got shot in the neck. We see people that got shot, they fell to the ground, and then everybody kept running.
Witnesses described at least 2 attackers firing into the crowd in the club's car park.
Everybody was running through the apartments behind it. Everybody was ducking down. We heard the gunshots. It sounded like it was 2 different guns. There was more than 1 shooter.
Officers quickly arrested 1 person and then 2 more, but there's been no information about them. Last month's Orlando nightclub attack killed 49 and had already renewed this country's debate about gun control. Now they question who would target such young people and why. Dan Johnson, BBC News.
Sam Allardyce says he's very proud to be appointed as the new England manager and that he wants a team effort to create a successful journey for England. In his first news conference since replacing Roy Hodgson, the former Sunderland boss said the job was the pinnacle of his career. Well, our sports correspondent David Ornstein is at St George's Park for us now. David.
Rita, in 2006, Sam Allardyce missed out on this role and thought his chance had gone for good. But after yet another tournament failure, England losing to Iceland at Euro 2016, his time has come. The new face of English football. Sam Allardyce, the latest man stepping up to revive the national team. It's a position he's coveted his entire career.
To sit here is obviously a huge thrill for me. I think that I think I fit the chair. I hope I do. I think I've got the experience to pass on and not only challenge the England team but challenge myself.
Allardyce is one of the country's longest-serving managers. Best known for his time with Bolton, he transformed the club on and off the pitch, building a reputation as a visionary, bringing the best out of players and getting results. He went on to lead Newcastle, Blackburn, West Ham and Sunderland, not once relegated from the Premier League.
He puts his name on the front door of the football team, and I think he takes that identity and embraces it, and he uses the strengths of the players, the weaknesses of opposition, and his attention to detail is second to none.
This is, though, an appointment that will divide opinion. Allardyce has never managed a top side, nor won a major trophy. There are questions about his style of play as well, but he's ready for the challenge.
I'm hardened. Over many years, you toughen yourself for whatever job you take, because you take the good with the bad. Otherwise you don't do it, don't bother. And I think I'm tough enough to take it. So bring it on, lads.
So Allardyce has finally landed his dream job, but now comes the public scrutiny, the pressure and the expectation. Well, Allardyce's first task, starting in September, is to qualify England for the 2018 World Cup. He denied they were at rock bottom, but insisted he is the man to reverse their fortunes. On a wider note, he spoke passionately about the English game needing a winter break. The Sam Allardyce era is underway. Rita.
David, thanks very much. England's cricketers look like they're heading for almost certain victory in the second test against Pakistan. Batsmen Alistair Cook and Joe Root picked up where they left off last night, piling on the runs this morning before eventually declaring with a lead of well over 500 runs. Pakistan now face an uphill struggle to avoid defeat, which would level the series at 1-1. From Old Trafford, here's Patrick Geary.
Getting to the test match is a question of timing. Leave it too late, hold on too long, and the consequences can be frustrating. Perhaps inside the ground, Alistair Cook is having similar thoughts. How long dare England bat? With the Mancunian weather always in play, many think England should have started bowling yesterday, as the captain got his calculations right. Time is equal to runs in this cricketing conundrum. England had to get a move on. Just as well, they had two batsmen with momentum. Cook and Root each passed 50 as Pakistan's deficit became an almost impossible sum. England were 564 ahead when Cook decided they'd waited long enough. Exit stage right for the big finale. The equation now, Pakistan had until the end of tomorrow to survive. England needed 10 wickets, and they have Jimmy Anderson on his home ground. Sham Masood, 9 to go.
There we go again.
Runs are irrelevant for Pakistan except as escapism from the pressure they're under. England know they can always rely on their northern powerhouse. Anderson trapped Azhar Ali, leg before wicket. They know they're hurtling towards victory, and Pakistan have found no way to cause any delay. Patrick Geary, BBC News at Old Trafford.
Now, there's a strange sight making its way across southwest England today. It's the biggest puppet ever built in the UK, a steam-powered giant that's 39 foot high. It's been made to celebrate the history of tin mining in Devon and Cornwall, and our correspondent John Kay has been to take a look.
Built in secret over the last 12 months, now finally revealed. Thousands gathered in Tavistock as the man engine rose above the crowds. He represents the miners who used to work in this part of southwest England. 12 metres tall, nearly 40 tonnes. It took 10 minutes for him to unfold.
Phenomenal! I know they said he was going to be 3 double-decker buses tall, but I couldn't quite picture that. But look at him, he's as tall as that building.
Absolutely stunning. Well worth waiting for.
Usually you think
puppets are quite small, but actually this one is quite large.
It's more than quite large.
What size is it? Humongous.
Britain's largest mechanical puppet has been built to celebrate this area's status as a United Nations World Heritage Site. The project aims to teach future generations about the mining past. It was the dream of one man.
What's it like to see it finally up?
It is a huge, overwhelming sense of relief that the crazy idea in the head is now manifest in reality. Tremendous relief.
Why was this so important for you and for this whole area?
We're at something of a renaissance of awareness in Cornish history, culture and identity, and we want to be part of making sure that that's celebratory, forward-looking, and is not just rooted in the past, but has its eyes set on the future.
Poldark he isn't. But if you're wondering what the man engine thought of it all, well, this is his view of the crowd.
Well, this puppet won't be standing still. Over the next few weeks, he's going to be travelling 130 miles all over Cornwall to lots of old mines, remembering this area's rich history.
John Kay, BBC News, Tavistock in Devon.
Let's look at the weather now. Here's Louise Lear. Louise.
Hi there. Well, we had our real taste of summer, didn't we, last week? In fact, this time last week we were talking about this. A southerly wind, some heat, some humidity, highs of 34 degrees. But if you haven't already noticed, a slight change to the feel of things. The winds have swung round to a westerly. They've driven that heat and humidity, hooray, I can hear you all saying, out of the way. And things are a little more comfortable, a little fresher out there, but still pleasant enough. I suspect, though, by the weekend there is the potential for the winds to swing round more to a northwesterly and drag in even fresher air, and temperatures then maybe a degree or so below average, so maybe a little bit more disappointing. But it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, it's a beautiful afternoon close to the River Tay, just to the north of Perth in Scotland. There is some cloud pushing into the north and the west, and some of that producing some showers. But many sheltered eastern areas have seen some lovely spells of sunshine so far, and it's pleasant enough out there. Now, the showers are fairly widespread up into the north and west of Scotland at the moment, some of them heavy, maybe even with the odd rumble of thunder, and some showers are likely into Northern Ireland as well. So highest values here perhaps into the mid-teens through the afternoon. A scattering of showers across northwest England and also into Wales, but dodge the showers, keep some sunshine coming through. It will feel pleasant enough. And that's going to be the story really across much of the southwest, as we saw in Cornwall, some lovely sunshine and the cloud hopefully breaking up for some brightness. And with that sunshine, it will feel still pleasantly warm. Now, through the night tonight, the showers will fade back to the north and west facing coast. The cloud thick enough, the odd spot or two of light drizzle here as well. But more importantly, a much more comfortable, fresher nightfall sleeping. And that certainly will come as pleasant news, 12 to 16 degrees right across the country. We start off on a relatively dry, bright note with some sunshine again, but the cloud drifting in from the west, and we'll see showers perhaps merging together for longer spells of rain across Wales for a time, some of them quite heavy. And yes, it's going to be a case of sunny spells and scattered showers for tomorrow. A bit of a messy story, really. In the sunshine, highest values, though, still 23 degrees, and perhaps into eastern Scotland, we're still likely to see the high teens. As we move through the middle of the week, we have got some weather fronts which will start to enhance the rainfall, and this little fella could cause some issues with more organised rain by Thursday. So for England and Wales, showers merging together for longer spells of rain. There could potentially be some hail in there and some thunder, drier perhaps to the north and west. Thursday doesn't look particularly pleasant. It looks as though the heaviest of the rain will always be to the north, but it does look as though things will cheer up a little on Friday. But it's a messy story, not that summer sunshine and warmth, Rita.
OK, Louise, thank you. Now, a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. A Syrian man has blown himself up and injured 12 other people near a music festival in southern Germany. Well, that's all from us. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.